Welcome to the latest Seahawks Draft Blog live stream. Rob and Robbie here because the schedule has been released. We now know when and where the Seahawks can be playing all of their opponents in 2025. So we thought we'd jump on. I think we did this last year, Robbie, and we're very optimistic about the Seahawks. And we weren't a million miles off in the end. You know, they still won 10 games, but I can't remember what the records were. But we thought we'd do something similar again here and have a look at what's going to happen this season. If people have got any super chats they want to send in, any thoughts, send those in, and we will come to those as quickly as we can. We're going to talk about a couple of other topics as well. But without further ado, Robbie, let's bring it up onto the screen here. So here is the Seahawks schedule for 2025, and we're going to go through every single game and give an early prediction. Now, of course, Robbie, it's far too early, isn't it, to have any real idea as to whether...
Super early. This is fun.
But it is. It's fun. It's just a nice way for us to gauge. And I'm going to be I'm going to try and be as realistic as possible on this, Robbie. You can do whatever you want. You know, you can be just extremely optimistic or negative or whatever you want to do. But I'm going to try and at least throw in a few curveballs because a season is never that predictable, is it? So there's always, like, the Giants beating the Seahawks last season. I don't think many people anticipated that.
Right.
So let's get to week one. It is the Niners against the Seahawks. Robbie, I have booked my plane tickets and my hotel.
I'll be there.
To be in Seattle. And you are going to be there as well.
That's right.
So the chances are, after the game,
we are going to be doing...
the little instant reaction might be a little different in that game.
Yeah, that's right.
So hopefully we're enjoying a drink, Robbie, and celebrating a win. Hopefully so. But I've got a really good feeling about week one. There was one or two people in the comments section after the schedule came out, or that the rumor was out that the Niners at home was going to be the first game, and they were a bit thinking, I'd rather play them later in the year because the offense might have settled down. However, I just think this is a good game for the Seahawks. You know, at home, week one.
We'll be there.
We're going to be there. You know, the Niners defense is green, and I've got a feeling the Seahawks are going to win this game, Robbie. So I'm going to go for a 1-0 start. What are your sort of thoughts on playing the Niners at home first up?
Same exact thoughts. I feel like this team is designed to beat the Niners, and I just don't think they had a great offseason. You know, we'll get into all that. I'm sure we'll talk about the Niners more, but I think this is a win. I think this is a win for us.
Yeah, I just think the Niners are a bit of a fading force, and we'll discuss a little bit about Brock Purdy's contract. But look, it could be a tough game. It is very easily could be a difficult game.
It is. It is going to be a tough game. Every NFC West game is going to be tough, regardless of if they're just crap. I mean, remember when the Cardinals were just bad, but yet they'd always play us tight? I mean, that's just the way it is. NFC West games are going to be tight. It's not going to be an easy game. I'm not saying this can be a cakewalk game. I just think this is going to be a win for the Seahawks. I think home opener. I think there's a lot of excitement, buzz around the team right now. I just think this is going to be good, and I think this is going to be one of those games where we're going to come out and we're going to put a good performance together and get a W. So
now, Robbie, I like to, I'm not just going off hope here. I like to provide some actual data to back up an opinion on this. If people are worried about Seattle's offense early in the season, week one against the Niners, maybe it's going to need some time to settle down. And I've got absolutely no doubt that I think aspects of it will need to settle down. It's very, very new offensive coordinator, changes to the offensive line, new quarterback, new receivers. Everything's going to be a little bit different. And I think probably that offensive line is going to be maybe around the bye week that we maybe see it starting to show real improvement. I think there's probably going to be some inconsistency early on. It's going to be quite young still. However, here's something for you, Robbie, and for anybody else who's listening to this. Clint Kubiak, offensive coordinator of the New Orleans Saints last season. Week one, his first season, so they've only had training camp to put this thing together. Week one, the Saints scored 47 points against the Panthers. Week two, they scored 44 points against the Cowboys. So they scored nearly 100 points in their first 2 games under Clint Kubiak, the Saints. And Sam Darnold isn't coming into this offense completely green. He's worked with Clint Kubiak before. The terminology is going to be very familiar for him. He's played in this kind of a system. He didn't have an amazing offensive line last year. The running game is going to be better for him this year, I believe. I think Seattle will have a better running game than the Vikings did. And he's not got Justin Jefferson, granted, but I still think they've got enough weapons there to be a threat in the passing game. So I'm not necessarily saying, Robbie, that I'd love it if they could get 44 or 47 points in the game that we're going to. But at the same time, I don't think this is necessarily going to be 9-6 is the point I'm getting at. I think there's a definite chance that the Seahawks will hit the ground running better than maybe some people expect.
Yeah, totally agree. There's just a lot to look forward to at home. I'm feeling good about it. So
off the back of that,
yeah,
I'm going to the Steelers. For some reason, the Seahawks can only play in Pittsburgh in week 2. It feels like in 2011 they played in week 2. I think it was 2019 they went to Pittsburgh in week 2 again. This is an interesting one because
it is.
Mason Rudolph, who's going to be the starting quarterback for the Steelers.
As of right now.
Yep. And, it could be Aaron Rodgers.
Could be Aaron Rodgers.
But, when's that going to happen, if it's going to happen? I still think it probably is going to happen. We saw Rodgers play against the Seahawks last season for the Jets, and I thought he did okay. I don't think he was the reason why the Jets lost that game. Leonard Williams is probably the reason why they lost that game, because he had such a fantastic performance, including a touchdown. So, what do you think? Because you obviously got Metcalf's a storyline.
Yep.
You've also got an aging Steelers defense. Don't know what they're going to do offensively. Najee Harris has gone, so they've lost their main running back. How do you see this one going?
I'm 50-50 on this one. I could see it going either way. I'm leaning more towards this is going to be a loss, but there's just so many things that could make this be a W. So I'm struggling with this one. This is one of the ones that I'm just really unsure about. I know that's kind of a cop-out answer.
Do you want to know what I think?
Yeah, let's hear what you think. Maybe you can convince me one way or the other.
I think the Seahawks are going to win. They were 7-1 on the road last year. So they were very good on the road. And I think the thing that is going to really be a big aspect for Seattle next season is I think the defense isn't going to need 6 to 8 weeks to get going. I think the defense is going to be pretty much on it from week 1, provided everybody gets through training camp healthy. If they've got Leonard Williams out there, I think Byron Murphy will probably take a step this year. This is the kind of game that John Reed's licking his chops. I think, that Steelers offensive line, not amazing. It's still quite young. And then defensively, they've got TJ Watt, but they're getting older, a bit long in the tooth on that defense. And I think if the Seahawks get a win in week 1, they'll have a bit of confidence, a bit of momentum there. I think this is a winnable game. So I'm going to have, they may make it harder than it needs to be because that's Seattle's way. But I think that they will ultimately get a win in this game and they will go to 2-0, Robbie.
I like it. Yeah, let's do it. We'll go 2-0.
So we're both 2-0. I'm making a tally of this. So I think we got halfway through it and we've kind of forgotten what each of us had said last year. So I'm making a tally. Right. Saints at home in week 3. This will be the Tyler Shough-led Saints, rookie quarterback in his 3rd game. A Saints team that has got just enough talent to be interesting. And I think if this was in New Orleans, I'd be fearful simply because the Seahawks always seem to find a way to blow the game in New Orleans. They always seem to go down there and throw away a win. But in Seattle, with Shough on the road, it's only week 3. I'd fear this one a little bit more if it was Derek Carr was healthy and was playing and you just thought he could put up like one of those old man performances in Seattle that you sometimes see from an opponent. But I'm fancying this one, Robbie, as a win. So I'm going to say it's going to be a handsome 3-0 start. What do you think?
I'm actually going to go opposite of you. I'm going to say this wasn't a loss, and I'm going to tell you why.
Go.
I feel like this is I feel like week 3, and I have no statistical data on this. This is just gut feeling. I feel like week 3 is like one of those weeks where, and although last year we did win, but I feel like there's one of those new offensive line. This is, as you said, this Saints team could go either way. They could be an absolute dumpster fire, or they could be really good. And I feel like the Seahawks just kind of lose one of these games. You know what I mean? Like they lose one of these games at home. You feel like they shouldn't lose. I'm going to chalk this one up as a loss. I hate to say it, but I feel like this is a game where we'll get done and be like, there's no way in hell we should have lost that game, and we pissed it away. So I'm going to go with a loss on this one.
Well, we have seen Alvin Kamara play very well against the Seahawks in the past. You know,
Yeah.
he could potentially have a good game there. I think the thing from the Saints though is they just seem to constantly be unable to turn the page. So they've had a couple of goes at trying to replace Drew Brees, and now they're going to go with the rookie quarterback, and maybe Tyler Shook will be the guy. But I don't think he's going to be the guy 3 weeks in. And then defensively, it feels like for the last few years, we've been saying, okay, now they need to sort of move on from Cam Jordan and draft somebody who's going to be his future replacement. They've not done that. They keep drafting for the offensive line, which is, certainly no issues with that. But you keep drafting for the offensive line, and yet they don't ever seem to sort of take the step forward and actually produce an elite offensive line. And they went offensive line again this year. So I think they're going to win. I'm going to go 3-0. Robbie's going to go 2-1. So I thought they were 3-0 last year, and I think they're going to get that again. Robbie's going to have them drop in the Saints game. So then they go to Arizona. Last year, 2 wins against the Cardinals. The Cardinals are a team with all of the ingredients to beat anybody, Robbie. They could beat any team. Or if they play their best football, they can beat anybody. Kyler Murray is not a bad player. They've got Trey McBride. You'd think that Marvin Harrison Jr. would be better in year 2. They've put a lot of stuff, resource into the defense now. I still just think they're lacking something. I don't quite know what it is, but they're just lacking something that makes you really fear them. So without wanting to be too much of a homer here, and people are going to be shouting at me in the comments, I'm sure, saying, what the hell are you doing, Staten? I'm going to say 4-0. In this game. This is a Thursday night game as well, isn't it? So
it is, yeah. Yeah, I'm gonna take this one as a win as well. And I know what you're saying. There's just something about the Cardinals that they're missing. And I think my gut is they're just missing like really good leadership, right? They're missing someone like Kyler Murray isn't the guy who's gonna rally the troops, He's a good player, but he just doesn't seem like the guy that people are rallying around to like, he's not gonna spark it up. So yeah, I'm gonna chalk this one up as a win.
So there we go. We're both agreed on that one. And look, it's not too hard to imagine how the Seahawks could lose this, in a short week.
Sure.
But there's just, I don't know. They always seem to go, apart from that one horrible game that we're not going to talk about, they always seem to do well in that stadium and win those games. And it has been a bit of a house of horrors in a different era. But I was impressed with the way that the Seahawks played the Cardinals twice last year. And I think they will have a bit of a back and forth in that game, but ultimately come out on top. Right, Bucs in Seattle. This is where I'm going to have them losing a game. Mm-hmm. And they could, and this isn't to say, if we predict a win, it doesn't mean that we feel that the Seahawks are necessarily definitely going to win the game that we go with a win. And I don't think they're definitely going to lose this game. I think this could be a very entertaining game. I think this could be a real, could go either way. Whoever has the ball last type of contest, could be high scoring, could easily see the Seahawks defensively just sort of flexing a little bit here and just having their way with the Bucs. But I've just got a feeling they're going to drop a game eventually, and it could be this one. Now, I'm going to argue a little bit against what I've just said there, Robbie, because I think defensively there are still quite a few issues on that Bucs defense. They're very blitz heavy, but then the Seahawks should be ready for this kind of defense because they have won there themselves. And they have lost Liam Cohen, their offensive coordinator, who did such a good job last year, and they've replaced him with a novice. They've basically just put Liam Cohen's right-hand man in charge of the offense. So I do think there's a chance that this could be a win, but I can't have the Seahawks winning every game, and the Bucs are a tough out. So I'm going to say that maybe Seahawks drop this game and get a 4-1. What do you think?
Yeah, I've gone back and forth on this one as well. I'm gonna go opposite though. I'm gonna go ahead and say this one's that's to say the offense is starting to gel and the offensive line is coming together and the defense puts on a show. I'm gonna say they win this one.
So we're both at 4-1. Do you know what? As I was talking about it, Robbie, I really want to just go 5-0 and just go with it. I do think. Do you know what? I'm going to change my prediction.
There you go.
I'm going to change my prediction because I can, because there's no rules to this. I'm going to say the Seahawks win this game. Mike Evans seems to play the Seahawks well every time.
He plays everyone well.
I mean, he's an unbelievable player.
Yeah.
And you've got like a load of weapons there. Like they've got so many receivers and can challenge you in different ways. You know, they've got a good running game. So I think it could be difficult. But I don't know. I just think defensively, there's not enough of a quality pass rush there. And I think they'll be ready for the creative stuff. And I think maybe by week 5, they'll be humming a little bit. So I'm going to go 5-0, and everyone's talking about the Seahawks, and this is a big win. And the other thing I was going to mention actually is, I think they're going to put a lot of emphasis on winning at home this year. I think this is going to be a big feature. I think Mike McDonald acknowledges this has to improve if they're going to be a decent team. I think they've kind of switched the team around to be more of the kind of team they want to be. And I think that will transpire that they win more home games this year. So I'm going to have them
well, listen, us season ticket holders have been threatened about selling tickets. I'm telling you, they said they literally said they will take our tickets away from us if you are not attending the games. If you've sold more than you've been attended, then they'll threaten to take them away from you. So I'm telling you, it's a thing.
Well, I think they're going to be 5-0 now. So I've changed my prediction. So this is a very optimistic start from me. I have to have them losing eventually. And Jags on the road, you know, when you talk about places where the Seahawks don't typically do very well.
Yeah.
Jacksonville and Florida in general is one of those places. So it's a 10 a.m. start. It's the other end of the country. I'm not a big believer in the Jags, but Liam Cohen has shown in Tampa Bay that he can put an offense together. So I think they might be a trickier team, a more competitive team this year than they have been in the past. I'm going to have the Seahawks losing in Jacksonville and dropping to 5-1. What do you think, Robbie?
Yeah, I think this is going to be a really ugly game, and I agree with you. I think in my mind, coming off a big win in Tampa Bay, against Tampa Bay, feeling like this is one of those letdown games, but I think they squeeze it out like a 16-13 kind of game. One that's just crap, but they still win. So I'm giving them a W.
You're going to go to 5-1. Okay, perfect. So I think there's a chance it could be like that. It's just whenever they go to Florida, like even when they've like played bad Miami teams, they've made hard work of it. When they've gone to Jacksonville, they've been pummeled in the past. They just don't play very well in that stadium. So I'm going to have them lose in that game. And then this one of the more intriguing games is up next when they play the Texans 8 days later. This is a Monday night football game, isn't it? So this is I think it's one of 2 Monday night football games. I'm trying to work out what that means for me in the UK, because sometimes they show both. Sometimes they don't. I might have to watch it on my old laptop there. But this is a difficult one to call, Robbie, because how do you kind of assess the Houston Texans? Because they weren't maybe as good as people thought last season, but they still got to the playoffs. They still were a tough out in the playoffs.
Yeah.
They do have some quality players. I liked aspects of what they did in the draft. So what do you think? I'll let you go first with this one.
Well, I'm going to say Monday Night Football. We tend to play well on prime time. It's going to knowing that we're going to the bye week, and then afterwards we're playing the Commanders. I'm going to say this is a win.
Yeah, I think I'm going to go for the same, purely because, like you say, it's prime time. You know,
maybe home.
Yeah, you know, it's as difficult as it is for Seattle to go all the way to Florida. Maybe the Texans coming up to Seattle Monday night. You know, they're still quite a young team. Maybe that would be a difficult one for them. I think if the Seahawks if the Seahawks lose in Jacksonville, like I've got them doing, I think they'd be really amped up to sort of draw a line under that and go for this. So I've got them going. So we're both at the bye, both 6-1.
Yeah.
So I'd take that right now. That'd be nice.
Yeah.
So they have the bye week, and then it's a good thing that they have a long time to prepare for this next game, because this is a difficult one against Jaden Daniels and the Washington Commanders. Now, the Commanders And Dan Quinn, of course, will probably feel like this is a big game for him. It's his old team. Perhaps felt he should have got the job in Seattle. So he'll be quite eager to get one over the Seahawks here, Robbie. I don't know, because this is hard to predict, because the Commanders, what was their record last year? Because I think we've kind of,
I don't remember. They were good.
I'm just having a look now. So they were good, but so they finished second. They were 12-5.
12-5.
So 12-5 last year. So that's really good, obviously. But I do think a little bit that the fact that they beat the Lions in the playoffs has maybe made people think a bit more about them than is actually the reality. Obviously, the quarterback is looking really good.
Yeah.
But, year 2, as CJ Stroud found, can be a challenge.
That sophomore slump seems to be a real thing.
Seattle has a lot of speed. I mean, like, they've got the kind of the perfect player, haven't they, if they want to spy him with Nick Immanwori. Like, if you wanted someone who can if you need Nick Immanwori, I mean, this is the one thing that Nick Immanwori does very well, is that if you need him to drop into coverage, he can do it with ease. And then you can play him up at the line because he's got the size to do it. I don't think he's not played as physically as he can do at his size. But I think this is why they've drafted him, because on any given play, you will not know what Nick Immanwori is doing, which is kind of the point of the Kyle Hamilton role. And it's what Nick Immanwori is going to do. And he could easily sit and say, right, if it's a pass, you drop. You can blitz. You can spy. Like, it's going to be quite confusing for Jaden Daniels in those situations. So they have got a good player to combat that. But just as I think the Texans game could be an intriguing one that Seattle ekes out, this could be maybe one of the games of the season, Robbie. A lot of points, exciting, but maybe the Commanders they're the home team. They get the edge. I'm going to go with the Commanders win and not the Seahawks lose.
I was going to say same thing. I'm strictly on the fact that they're the home team. If the roles were reversed, I'd say Seattle ekes this one out. But I'm going to go with a loss. It doesn't seem like this is going to be one that they're going to be able to pull off. But again, a lot of things can happen in this game, right? That, as you were saying, the sophomore slump with Jaden Daniels could be a real thing. He could be struggling. Maybe the Commanders won't take teams by surprise this year. They'll be a little more prepared for going against the Commanders and what they bring to the table. So, but yeah, I'm still gonna chalk this one up as the loss.
There's a lot of expectation in the Commanders as well that they didn't have a year ago. Like, the fans will be thinking they're like a Super Bowl contender now. So,
which they could be.
They could be, or they could regress.
They could. Yeah.
And the NFC East is quite good at, the teams kind of mix around a lot, don't they? Like different winners of the division all the time. So we'll see. But we're both on 6-2 then after 8 games. Cardinals at home. I think this again. I had them winning in Arizona. I'm going to have them winning in Seattle, Robbie. So you down with that? So we're 7-2. 7-2. Things still looking pretty good. Right, Rams. First time that the Seahawks face the Rams is in LA.
Yeah,
I think the Seahawks should have beaten the Rams twice last year, and I think that home game was an absolute. Geno Smith had some good games last year, and that was one of his worst games. And he was a large reason for that loss. Forcing that pick six that was just ridiculous, stuff like that. Defense didn't play well either. But I just think. I think Seattle's better than the Rams. I think they're a better team. I think last year was perhaps the inexperience of the staff, the bad offense, the bad offensive staff. I think Seattle's better than the Rams, and I'm going to have them beating the Rams in LA.
I'm going to have them losing this one as well. I've got it chalked up as a loss. I think, I agree with all that you said. I think we should have beat them twice last year. I just think NFC West, the fact that it's on the road, something about playing the Rams, I just never feel super comfortable. So yeah, I'm gonna go ahead and give them a loss on this one.
So I'm at 8-2. You're at 7-3. The next game is the Titans. Now, I am gonna have the Seahawks losing this game, Robert.
Are you really? Okay.
Yeah, they are gonna. Look, I've got them at 8-2 going into this game. They are gonna lose a stupid game because most teams do.
Yeah.
And there's no reason for them to lose to what was basically the worst team in the league last year. And Cam Ward's a rookie, and that could cause all sorts of issues for the Titans if he has growing pains. I don't think there's anything good about their roster, but I just wonder if 10 or 11 games into the season, things might have settled down a little bit. I would not expect the Seahawks maybe to lose this game, but it's a 10 a.m. start. I know that they generally do okay with those, but this is another stadium where they've had some rough moments when they were there last. They just about squeezed out the win when they played really badly, and then 2 drives from Geno Smith at the end, and they won the game. So I just got a feeling they might take their eye off the ball a little bit. They are going to lose a game that we don't expect them to lose, and I wonder if this could be the one. So I'm going with that, Robbie. What do you think?
Polar opposite. I think we're going to just whoop their ass. I think this is going to game we're going to dominate. I think the defense is going to clamp down. We're going to make Cam Ward look dumb, and we're going to dominate the Titans. I don't see them winning this one. Nope.
Awesome. Right. Well, we're both 8-3 after 11. Vikings at home. I am going to have the Seahawks winning this game. Now, as we saw last season, it's another game Seattle should have won, in my opinion. And that was should have won whilst not playing particularly well. And now the Vikings, I think, I'm not a big J McCarthy guy. I don't think you are either, Robbie. So from memory, and he's going to have to come in, and this is not a continuation of last season for the Vikings because they've got a different quarterback. We've got their quarterback now. I think Sam Darnold might have the bit between his teeth.
Yep.
Because they decided not to keep him and move on. So I think it could be a similar game to last year.
Yeah.
But with the Seahawks ultimately winning. It would not surprise if this came down to like a reverse of like it was a Sam Darnold game-winning drive last year to win it from Minnesota. Wouldn't be surprised if it's a Sam Darnold game-winning drive for Seattle to win this game. So I'm going to have them win it, and I'm going to have them at 9-3.
Yeah. So I am having them win this game as well. Originally, when I looked at the schedule, I had them losing this game, but the more I thought about it, the more I felt like this is going to be a Sam Darnold show, and he's going to want to put a little revenge on them, and this is his payback. So they're going to. I think the plan is for him to make them regret their decision. So I think we win this one.
Falcons on the road. I can't tell you how much I think the Falcons are an embarrassment. I think they are. I think the GM keeps, whether it's the GM, the owner, whatever it is, it just keeps making questionable decisions. They are not a well-run team, and I don't think Raheem Morris is much of a head coach. And I think they're going to be the same Falcons they've been for the last few years this year, and I think that'll make them soft and quite easy to play against. I think by this point, the season will be nearly over for them, and the stadium will be 3/4 full. And I think the Seattle Seahawks are going to go to Atlanta, and as they have done in the past, are going to win handsomely. I'm going to get them moving to 10-3 here.
Yep, I totally totally agree. I think the Falcons are not well run, and it's going to be. I think there's going to be another game where you're right. By the fourth quarter, the fans will be gone, and you'll get the Seahawks chant going.
Yeah, you can just see it, can't you? And like Michael Penix, I know Michael Penix is interesting because this will be his first season starting. I fear for him a little bit. I think the whole way he's been handled, you draft him with the idea of betting him in, and then he's already starting as a rookie, which is not what they intended. Otherwise, I'm going to give Kirk Cousins all of that money, and I just don't see a great situation for him, a great staff for him. Yeah, I'm not feeling the Falcons.
I mean, that's the only way that they would win, in my opinion, is Michael Penix puts on a show.
If he's better than we realize,
then I could see this. I could see a switch there. Let's talk about that maybe after the bye, and we'll see how they're playing. But right now, I think just purely on what I'm guessing, I don't think this is any way the Seahawks should lose this game.
And I feel very similar about the next game, the Colts. Yep. The Colts have got some decent players, but it's Daniel Jones. It's probably going to be the quarterback. Anthony Richardson seems as if they're already kind of thinking this isn't going to work. I always thought with him that Richardson needed a bit of time to sit. And if you were going to play him, Robbie, you just had to live and die with the mistakes for a couple of years in the way that the Bills did with Josh Allen. And I think the Colts have handled this. They've done neither of those things. They've benched him and then brought him back. So unlike Josh Allen, you don't just live through the growing pains and say it's a means to an end. And the light will switch on with more. He'll learn from his mistakes. Let him make the mistakes. They've not had the patience to do that. And neither did they sit the guy. So I think they've completely mishandled Anthony Richardson. And now Daniel Jones feels like he's the guy they want to push into the starting role. I just don't fear that. I know Daniel Jones won in Seattle last year, so I guess there's a chance that he could do it again. Yeah. I just don't fancy the Colts in Seattle if Seattle's 10-3 at this point. Like right. This could be like, wow, if you win your next 2 games, you win the NFC West type of stuff. So sure. I'm going to have them winning this to get to 11-3.
Yeah, I have them winning this one as well. Listen, I'm out in Indianapolis, and fans are already not wanting to go to the games this season. I was talking to someone last night about it, and he's like, "Man, I don't even want to go into games." He's like, "I might make the trip out to where they're playing in London this year. I think they got
I think they are. Yeah,
yeah." He's like, "I might make that trip just for the experience of going to a game overseas." But he's like, "Other than that, I don't even know if I want to go." So yeah, fans are already turned on the team. I think this is going to be a win.
On the sort of the coming over here stuff, I was quite worried, Robbie, because there were a couple of the journalists kept saying maybe the Seahawks will play the Jaguars in London, and I remember whenever the Seahawks have played abroad, the journalists have speculated a lot about it as if they know, but they can't say until it's officially confirmed. And I was convinced that Seattle was going to be playing the Jaguars in London as a consequence of this, and then I was worried because there is a week, so I'm in France at the end of October. And it's very difficult I can't watch the Seahawks games when I'm not in England. Like the streaming service that we watch the games on it, so I can watch every Seahawks game, only works in the country that you buy the subscription. So I can only watch it in the UK. So I was thinking, this is a nightmare. So I'm not going to be able to watch whoever they play if it's a normal game in Seattle. And if they're in London, imagine being not in England when the Seahawks are. Like, it's just ridiculous. Like, I'm going to miss the game. I thought it's great. I can go to the press conference and everything and then just go away and not watch the game.
Yeah.
That'd be crazy. But as it turns out, Seattle's bye week is when I'm in France. I mean, it couldn't have worked out any better. So I don't have to worry about them either being in London. I'm not going to miss any games. Like the game, when I'm in the air flying to France, it's the bye week Sunday. So... Yeah. Do you know what I celebrated when I was like, hang on a minute, they've got their bye week when we're away. That's amazing. Fucking awesome. I couldn't. Yeah. It's as if they consulted me on when the ideal bye week was. So, and it's a good bye week to have. It's kind of in the middle, isn't it? So, yeah, it's pretty good. Right. So, 11-3, 3 games to go. Rams in Seattle. What are you thinking, Robbie?
Well, I had them losing in LA. I have them winning at home. I know it was the opposite last year, but I have this is kind of a revenge game for us. And we get the win on this one.
Okay. So, Robbie to 12-3. The thing is like getting to a point now where I'm almost sort of thinking, do I want to be too optimistic? Like because the minute you start sort of looking at 13, 14 wins, you think that's a lot of wins. That's a lot of wins. And, the Rams, they might be desperate in this situation. I'm going to say Seattle loses one of these games. Maybe this just keeps the Rams in the hunt. And it's disappointing. And we have a frustrating night where we come on a stream, Robbie, and we go, oh, no, I can't believe they've blown that game. Like, that was one they had to have. And, it's frustrating, and it keeps the Rams alive in the race to the NFC West. I think maybe if the Seahawks win, that's it, and they win the division, because I do think it's going to be between the Seahawks and the Rams. So I'm going to have the Rams come into Seattle and stealing one, one of those frustrating losses again.
Yeah.
And having them at 11-4. Right. Panthers on the road. Off the back of that frustrating loss, I've got the Seahawks handling business. I think this is Christmas week, isn't it? But they go over to Carolina. It's not pretty. It's maybe like a slightly better version of the Bears game on Boxing Day last year. but they come away with a win, and I've got them at 12-4. What do you think, Robbie?
Well, you're talking about one of those games where we shouldn't lose towards the end of the season. This is it. This is where I have them losing to the Panthers. And on paper, there's no way the Panthers should win. I don't like their draft was horrible. I didn't love their draft. I wouldn't say it was horrible, but it wasn't my favorite. I do think they tried to cater a little bit maybe to Bryce Young, get him some weapons. But I just think this is one that slips through our fingers, and we're all left pissed off with only 1 week left to go. So I have them losing this game.
And that leaves the Niners on the road. So I think by beating the Panthers, the Seahawks might be the NFC West champions, and that they've already won the division at this point. So, maybe you rest players against the Niners. I don't know. What do you think? You're going for a win.
It's a win. I don't think Mike McDonald's going to lose to Kyle Shanahan. I think he is born to destroy Kyle Shanahan. So I think we win. I think we take this as a W.
So I think in this situation, if the division is won, they may rest players and that's it, and they may lose. But if they haven't won the division, then I agree with you, Robbie, and therefore I'm going to say it's a win, just for the sake of it. Now, if they get to 13-4, let me have a look at the 2024 NFL standings. So 13-4, which is it's very optimistic on our behalf. Like, we have to sort of be honest about that. That's it. Most people are saying 10, 11, 12, and we've gone as high as 13, and we might look silly in 12 months, sort of making that.
This is a very optimistic early view, right? We haven't even got through training camp yet. If we come back and do this right after preseason, we might change our predictions. But right now, we're just going off paper, and it's for fun, right? There's no.
Of course. And also, I don't think it's a particularly horrendous looking schedule, is it really?
No, it's not. I mean, I think then there's a couple games you could flip flop, right? And
yeah,
right. I mean, I think the ceiling is definitely like 13, 14 wins, and the floor is probably like 8 or 9.
Well,
right?
You're playing the AFC South, which is not a it's not a great division.
Mm-hmm.
You are playing the NFC South, which is not a great division. So you've got the NFC and the AFC South. That's extremely generous to get both of those two divisions. If I think the Seahawks are the most talented roster in the NFC West, that doesn't mean they're going to win it. I mean, I don't. The Rams could be. They're exceptionally well coached. They're the only team in the division with a Super Bowl winning quarterback. These things do matter. That Jared Verse and Braden Fisk are very difficult. They could still win the NFC West. The Niners could be better than we expect, but I think they're a fading force. But if you are the better team in your division and you're playing the NFC South and the AFC South, I think you have an opportunity there to win some games. And then you look at some of the other games. Then, Robbie, they get to play the Steelers. Now, if they were playing the Bengals or the Ravens in the AFC North, that would be much harder. But they're playing the Steelers, who have Mason Rudolph right now. So I don't really.
We all know it's going to be Aaron Rodgers, though. We know it's
sure, but even if it's Aaron Rodgers, it could be Joe Burrow or Lamar.
Right.
It's not. It's the Steelers, and then you're playing the Vikings, who, again from that division, it could be the Lions. It could be the Packers, who easily beat the Seahawks in Seattle last year. But it's the Vikings, who are a good team, but you have their quarterback. He's probably got some inside info there. And who knows what J.J. McCarthy's going to be. So I actually don't think, when you actually break down what the schedule is like, 13 wins is not out of the question. So last year, the Bills had 13 wins. The Chiefs had 15 wins, and the Ravens had 12. They were the leading teams in the AFC. In the NFC, the Eagles had 14 wins. The Rams 10, the Lions had 15, the Vikings 14, and the Bucs 10. Now, The other reason I'm going to justify 13 as a prediction at this very early stage, Robbie, that both you and I have gone for, is the Vikings won 14. Now, no one would have predicted that a year ago. And the Vikings got to 14 because they had some fortune in some certain games, which were won by a game, by a score, rather. And they didn't have the hardest schedule. And they got to 14. So I don't think it's beyond the realms of possibility that Seattle could get to 13. And if they get to 13, they're probably going to be the first or second seed, Robbie.
Yeah, I agree. I think we're going to win the NFC West this year. I agree. I think we'll have a home game this year. I think I'll be flying out for the first home game, for sure, for that one as well. And I think people are asking what we had last year, and I think last year I had 9. You had 9, maybe 9.
I think I had 10
Yeah,
at
10,
least.
and I think they ended up winning 10. So yeah, I mean, we were pretty close in our prediction last year. Not saying that that's going to be accurate to this year, but I mean, going through this exercise, kind of just predicting where that, I think this is healthy because it gives you a good idea of like where, on paper at least, how these teams are going to play. Again, things can happen. Like no one predicted the Commanders to be as good as they did last year. Maybe that's the Saints. Maybe that's the Texans. And those games could immediately become a lot harder, right? You're just, it's unpredictable at this point. But I think I think the NFC West is going to be is up for grabs, and I think we can take it and get a home playoff game.
Yeah, I agree with you. I think we've got the better roster in the division, and I think that we're going to see an opportunity here for Seattle to move forward. Now, if we're going to play devil's advocate, Robbie, and wonder what might stop the Seahawks having the kind of success that we're talking about here, it is, Sam Darnold not playing as well as he did last year.
Right. It starts at the quarterback position, easy. And I mean, I think I saw an article yesterday where someone was already predicting Jalen Milroe. They're saying that it's a possibility he could overtake Sam Darnold by week 4. Like, I mean, and let's say, but like, no, I mean, listen, let's say he just comes out and he's just garbage, right? Let's say he was just a product of the system in Minnesota and he's not good, right? And we lose our first 4 games. You could see a scenario where maybe that does happen. Like it starts with Sam Darnold. That's where we could start to see ourselves not being as good. But I just don't think that's the case.
No, I think I agree. And I think it'd be harder to be as optimistic as we obviously being if Darnold was coming into a completely new system and he hadn't, worked with this offensive coordinator before. They have a relationship. It's not just 1 year with Kevin O'Connell. It's the previous year with the Niners. This is not all brand new. I do think that they're going to improve their offensive line merely by scheme and therefore the running game.
Mm-hmm.
And yes, it is going to be interesting to see how they work things out with the passing game because they don't have DK Metcalf and Tyler Lockett anymore. But Robbie, sometimes DK Metcalf looked unstoppable. And sometimes he looked like the most frustrating player in the NFL. And I'm not worried about this. I think that they're going to feature the tight ends more. Yeah. I think Arroyo's got a great chance to be an early impact player. I think that the type of receiver they brought in, they are Niners type of receivers. They're Rams types of receivers. Torrey Horton, everyone was like, Puka Nakua's in round 5. No one was going to expect him to be what he was. I'm not saying that Torrey Horton's going to be Puka Nakua, but he's a 5th round pick, Robbie, that people have overlooked. Yeah. And I thought he was a 2nd or 3rd round type. And I think the Rams had a 2nd or 3rd round grade on Puka Nakua when they took him in round 5. Again, I'm not saying that that's what's going to be. I'm just saying that you can find these guys. So I think that is the reason to be optimistic there. And I'm very, very chipper about the Seahawks this year.
Yeah, and I think when you mentioned DK Metcalf, he was probably one of the more immature players in the league, right? All the talent in the world just couldn't figure it out mentally, and like he was just his silly penalties when he'd get mad and kill drives or things like that. We're not going to miss that. I mean, you add a guy like Cooper Kupp who's not going to do that, right? He's going to play hard. He might not play as many games as you need him to because he's going to be injured. He's older, but you got players that'll come in and can still make plays, right? And I think that's what you need. Guys that can still get open, make plays, get those big 3rd down conversions, get in the right spot for the quarterback to find them. And let's be honest, Metcalf dropped a lot of balls too. So that you got guys who have a little more sure-handed at the receiver position. JSN, I think, can take a big step forward this year, even without those players being here. I think he has the ability to be a true number one. I think that I'm really excited about where we're at. I'm okay moving on from Gino and from DK. I think it was a smart move. And this is something we haven't seen them do, other than maybe Jamal Adams moving on. Well, even then, they probably should have moved on sooner. But even we don't tend to move on as quickly as we did, and we did. So I'm happy that we've moved on, and it seems like maybe we've taken the step in the right direction and getting rid of guys a little earlier than we have, I should say.
Agreed. So there we are. The Seahawks are going to finish 13-4. So we've decided. We've called it, and it's that's the way it's going to be.
Book it, write it down.
Glenn has super chatted in. Fun. You guys are great. Thank you, Glenn. Really appreciate your support. If anyone else has any other super chats, send those in before we finish. So a couple of last things I wanted to talk about, Robbie, with you. Brock Purdy has signed his new contract. Now, we don't have the full details of this yet, so the full picture of what it means for the Niners is yet to be revealed. And they could have outs, and there could be sort of, all sorts of different aspects of this contract that make it a little bit more team-friendly than it appears in the first flush. But the Niners have gone, I wrote about this in the week, the Niners have gone from this position of having this great thing, like this great, cheap quarterback, 7th-round pick. It enables you to pay a lot of different players. You get the benefit of, a position that is costing some teams $50+ million a year. You're getting them for a couple of million and stuff like that. And when you're in that position, the fact that Brock Purdy is not an elite player, and he is not an elite quarterback, he's a good quarterback, I think, but he's not an elite quarterback. I also don't think he'd work in most systems outside of Kyle Shanahan, but he is with Kyle Shanahan, so there's no point reflecting on who he wouldn't work with. He works in this system, and he's a good quarterback. And when you have a good quarterback earning no money, that's you have won the lottery. And the Niners deserved all the praise and all the credit for getting into that position. But then when you have a good quarterback who relies on the system, Robbie, earning elite money, then it becomes a problem. And even if this is a little bit less of a cap hit every year than was first announced, which had him on the same range as a whole bunch of other average quarterbacks who are earning fantastic money, like Trevor Lawrence and Jordan Love and Tua Tagovailoa and people like that, and Jared Goff. Even if it's a bit lower than that, he's still going to be on a substantial amount of money per year that the Niners are now locked into. And they said it's $181 million guaranteed, which feels like quite a lock-in at this point to Brock Purdy. This will prevent the Niners from being able to spend as much as they have in the past. It will stop them being able to trade for talented veterans. They can probably no longer just go out and get Trent Williams for third rounder and pay him a fortune. Christian McCaffrey, pay him a fortune. Hey, George Kittle's just got a new contract. In the future, they're probably going to have to think twice about whether they're going to do stuff like that. They are now going to have to draft very, very well. And a final point, Robbie, before I bring you in on this is what I wrote about. Their drafting in recent years has not been good at all. So let me just run through this. In 2022, their top 3 draft picks were Drake Jackson, Tyrion Davis-Price, and Danny Gray. None of those 3 players are on San Francisco's roster. In 2021, the top 3 picks were Trey Lance, Aaron Banks, and Trey Sermon. None of those 3 players are on the roster. In 2022, they had 2 first-round picks and then nothing until round 5. Javon Kinlaw was the first-round pick. He's not with the team anymore. Brandon Ayuk was the other one, and he is now on an absolute fortune and could be a white elephant for the Niners because he's just had a very serious injury, and who knows how he's going to come back from that. He's earning an absolute fortune now. So for a number of years, the Niners drafting has been appalling, Robbie. It's not been that it's not been any good. Like, they do a decent job finding contributing players in the day 3 range, but their top picks just wasted every single year. On top of the fact they used 3 first-round picks on Trey Lance. They've had to get the Brock Purdys and Malik Mustafas and people like that to compensate for how badly they've drafted over the years. So I have no faith that the Niners are going to be able to draft their way to a great supporting cast of Brock Purdy, and I think he's the kind of quarterback who needs a great supporting cast. So for me, I think they are regressing. A year ago, I said that I thought it was kind of like that was their last chance, that last Super Bowl that they lost. That now, like last season was probably the last chance that they had to make it. They didn't make it, they didn't get close. I don't think they're going to be what a lot of people expect them to be next year, Robbie. And I just wonder whether this Brock Purdy contract will contribute to a period in the doldrums for the Niners.
Yeah, I think I mean I 100% agree. I don't think this was look. Brock Purdy's a fine player. He's a middle of the road quarterback. I think that maybe they're rewarding him for some of the work that he has done. Seems like a good dude, good personality. You know, lots of things I like about being Mr. Irrelevant, right? But I don't know that they paid a lot of money to him. Again, we don't know the contract details yet, but seems like a lot to give a guy to. They're gonna have to put a lot on his shoulders, and he's gonna really have to elevate. It's funny you say Kyle Shanahan because if that guy could just literally and they just got who do they have as their backup now? We were worried about him going to San Francisco from
Mac Jones.
Mac Jones. They have Mac Jones, right? You almost could see them like saying, "Hey, we're gonna just like franchise tag you for 1 year, Brock, and now we're gonna go Mac Jones to see how he fits in our system." Wouldn't that make more sense? Like that would seem like something that they would do. Instead, they paid a lot of money. I don't know what the outs are, but that seems like a lot. I don't know. And Mac Jones seems to be a guy who would fit the Kyle Shanahan system really, really well.
Well, the talk was that Kyle Shanahan wanted Mac Jones, and that the personnel people convinced him to go with a more upside pick in Trey Lance. So
Right.
he did. And I agree with you. Part of me wonders a little bit, why are they not just waiting this out? Like, you could easily imagine a situation like, I'm sorry to Brock Purdy, but he doesn't play well, or he gets injured, or anything like that. And then, Matt Jones gets a chance, Robbie, and he runs with it. And, Shanahan has shown that he doesn't necessarily need, amazing physical, talented players to succeed in his system. He took Jimmy Garoppolo to a Super Bowl. He's taken Brock Purdy to a Super Bowl. The league is going through a bit of a trend at the minute with Baker Mayfield, Geno Smith, Sam Darnold, reclamation projects. Matt Jones almost feels like tailor-made to be a reclamation project for Kyle Shanahan. Why wouldn't you sort of wait this out for another year and just go to Brock Purdy? Look, we ain't going to pay you. But if you deliver on this year, we're going to, at the very least, franchise tag you next year. That's going to make you extremely wealthy. We are committed to keeping you at the quarterback if you deliver this year, but we just want to keep our options open. And who knows? Like, you could easily see Matt Jones coming in there and succeeding in a way that he hasn't elsewhere because the fit's good. So I don't know. I just don't. I don't feel like the Niners are on a pathway to where they're, when they were at their best, Robbie, they had such an unbelievable defensive line. And then it was backed up with two great linebackers. They still have one of those guys. Richard Sherman was there with a chip on his shoulder at quarterback. And then you had this offense, which was led by Trent Williams in his prime years, with Christian McCaffrey in his prime years, and Debo in his prime years. And so many of these pieces are either really old now or they have gone. They have Nick Bosa, really. I know people say Michael Williams might be really good. All I would say to that is he's just somebody who he's going to have to take a giant step forward. He's going to have to be much more consistent. He's going to have to stay healthy on the field. We don't have any great testing numbers for him. He did a bit of testing at the pro day, and that wasn't great. So he's a big question mark for me. And, when you think about players who were drafted a year ago in the first round, the Chop Robinsons, the Jared Verses, people like that, it was so much easier to project them to success than Micah Williams. So I would have really feared Jared Verse or Chop Robinson in Seattle. I'm not saying that as hindsight. I had those two players graded extremely highly as legit first-round talents. I'd be concerned about either of those two players playing Seattle in San Francisco, I should say. And I don't see that way about Micah Williams. So I think they're going to be a bit of a busted flush for me. And I think it's between the Rams and the Seahawks for this division. Final thing in the last 5 minutes, unless we have any other super chats that people want to send in. The other thing I wrote about recently this week, Robbie, was about Trey Hendrickson, and he seems to be quite emotional about what's happened in Cincinnati, and seems quite concerned about how he's been treated. Now, the Bengals are notoriously difficult to negotiate with. I could definitely see them cutting the nose off to spite the face and just letting him hold out for 6 weeks, then force him to come back and play for the team. And then think, well, this gives us the best chance to win in 2025, so we're just going to do that. The smart thing to do would be to get a deal done ASAP or trade him. If you get to the season and things are not going as well for the Bengals, or even let's imagine a scenario where they're going fantastically for the Bengals. Let's say that Shamar Stewart just rocks up as a first-round pick and fills the void, and that they're playing very, very well, and they feel like, okay, we can afford to trade Trey Hendrickson and get a pick for next year. Would you be interested? He's 31 in December. And if you were interested, what would you be willing to give up for him?
Yeah, I mean, they made a silly mistake in not trying to get a pick this year. They've kind of made a choice to like not capitalize on this draft and really get value for the upcoming season when they could have if they're going to trade him. So I mean, it's a interesting decision, but tells me they think, in my opinion, tells me they think they can get a deal done. Now I know that he's being emotional and he says, yeah, but there's so many times where players say stuff and you think, oh, they're gone, they're never coming back, and then the next thing you know, money is shown and they've signed and all is well. Oh, I always wanted to be here. This was never I never wanted to leave. I was just mad or whatever, and they end up staying. I could see a scenario where they finally work it out. You're right. The Bengals are the worst when it comes to like negotiation, but that doesn't mean they can't get it done, and I think they will. I mean, look, they got it done with their wide receivers. I think they can get it done with him. But if things go really sour, yes, I absolutely would be willing to trade for him. I think he is a phenomenal talent. He's one of the top defensive ends in the league, and if you get a chance to add a talented player like that, heck yeah, go for it. What would I give up? I would say a third, maybe a second. I wouldn't give up a first. I don't think you need to. I think that the negotiating window for them is gone. They don't have the power anymore. They know he's gonna, like, if they're willing to trade him, the team trading for him knows that they don't have to give up as much anymore because they have blown the window past what they could have done earlier. So if they were going to try to trade him this year or prior to the draft, they probably could have got a first if they wanted it. They blew that chance. So my guess is third to fifth maybe, or a second round. Call it good at that.
See, there's a couple of things in terms of compensation. I think they were willing to give up a second in season for 10 games of Leonard Williams, and they were willing to give up a fourth for a 10-game rental of Ernest Jones. So this is a GM who has shown that he's willing to rent players. Now, he's obviously a bit older. He's older than Ernest Jones, and he's a couple of years older than, or a year, I think he's a year older, isn't he, than Leonard Williams when they traded for him. So I suppose my way of looking at this is, if you trade for him in season, let's say that he holds out, the Bengals start well, and they're willing to give him up because they've started well. He said he's not going to come back. He says he will come back grudgingly, but he's not going to sign a new deal with the Bengals. You will lose me for nothing, but they're playing well. They say, okay, we'll just write this off. I would consider a second, because I know people. I see someone in the comments said no way for a second. The thing you're going to remember about Trey Hendrickson is he has not missed a game for 2 years, and in those 2 years he has 35 sacks. 35 sacks. There are like teams who don't have as that many sacks in 2 years. Like he is one of the elite edge rushers in the NFL. He's just been consistently brilliant. And for a team like Seattle, who is one of the few teams who've actually got the cap space to do this, to acquire him, and is, I think, getting closer to a point where you can legitimately say there's a chance here, like they could properly be competitive. I think you have to consider it if you could get him in. And look, like I said, they brought in Leonard Williams, and they thought they've kind of looked at this is the way I kind of feel about it. They've looked at Leonard Williams as we're going to get him for 4 years, and we think he's one of the better defensive tackles in the league, and we're going to get 4 years of quality play out of him. I think if you feel like you can get 4 years of Trey Hendrickson, which would take him to 34, then I would go for it. And I've just got a feeling, and maybe I'm wrong on this, but we can reflect on this in a few years. I've just got a feeling that Hendrickson's a bit of a Trent Williams in that regard. A bit of a Lane Johnson. Do you know? I know they're both offensive linemen, but players who are going to play for a long time and probably going to play at a decent level, that even when he's 34, he's probably not going to be a 17 and a half sack guy at that point, but might still get you 10 or 12. So, and also, he's the kind of player that you want to bring into your locker room. He is full on passion, energy. He's going to drive you forwards. He is someone who is he is legit. And I know it's expensive, but let's put it this way, Robbie. We just both predicted the Seahawks going to be 6-1. That they were going to start the season 6-1 going into their bye week. If they get to their bye week at 6-1 and are top of the NFC West and in contention for the number 1 seed, and you have a chance to add at that point Trey Hendrickson, for what might end up being, if it's a second round pick, a pick in the late 50s or even early 60s, depending on how your season pans out, I'm not worried about that too much, Robbie. I am not worrying. I'm not second guessing. I didn't like the cost of the Leonard Williams trade, the 10 games. But given what he did last year, I can stomach it a bit more. If you're going to trade for Trey Hendrickson and pay him and he can give you, quality play for the next 3 or 4 years, I'm not worried about that. He could help you win a Super Bowl.
Mm-hmm. Think about it. This guy had 17 and a half sacks last year. 17 and a half.
And the year before.
And the year before that. 2 years in a row. If you throw this guy in the mix on our defensive line, even if he gets like 13 sacks, I'm going to be stoked. That's awesome. I want that on our team. So yeah, give me that guy. I mean, I would refrain from giving up a first round pick just because I don't think it's needed anymore. I hate when we overpay for players, and I think sometimes we do that as an organization, and it pisses me off. I feel like sometimes John goes against the guys he wants, but at whatever the cost is, he doesn't care. If you can just not do that and still get the player, do it. Second round is probably the highest I would go. I even think a third and a fifth is probably good enough to get the deal done. So
I think the best thing about waiting in the season is, we're talking about the bye week, you get to there and maybe you can do a deal there. I suppose the argument is that if you get to the bye week and let's say DeMarcus Lawrence is looking absolutely fantastic and Boya Maffei's taking a step or Derek Hall or Uchenna Nwosu's back, or as a group of 4, they're all playing very, very well, then maybe you just think we don't need to do this.
Yeah.
But if they're playing, if the Maffei and Hall are they just the same players who've been watching for the last 2 or 3 years? If they've not actually showing any signs of being able to take the next step, if Nwosu's, still maybe feeling his way back after injury, and if DeMarcus Lawrence is either hurt again or is just like looking like a solid run-stopping defensive end at this point, then I think you have to consider it. So obviously, it depends where you are when you actually talk about doing this deal. And maybe they would rather wait than do it now or at training camp. But I'm just saying, anytime you get a chance, even if they're 30 years old, as Hendrickson is right now, anytime you get a chance to draft a quality elite edge rusher, I think you have to seriously consider it. I'm not saying definitely do it, but I think you have to seriously consider it because those players they're not available. And if he was 25, you'd be talking like 3 first-round picks. So I think
I agree. And someone just made a point, like giving up another player. Maybe you give up a Boya Maffei and a pick to go get him instead. I mean, that's not bad, really. Honestly, that's a player that will immediately improve your team, no matter how good your team is. He's going to help you no matter what. So, and I had edge as a position of need, even with who we have going into the draft. And it's one of the needs, one of the areas that we didn't draft. So,
I just say. This is a GM who over the last couple of seasons has been very aggressive in season.
Yeah.
Very aggressive. So I just keep that in mind when maybe it's not for now, but when the season starts, I could see them being very aggressive again because I don't think they're that far away. And I think John and they're quite keen to take that next step now. I don't think they want to be sort of 10, 11 wins, fringes of the playoffs again. I think they want to take the next step. So I think they might be aggressive next year. And look, we've always been kind of wondering, Robbie, do they want to save the picks because they want to be aggressive on quarterbacks and stuff like that? Well, they've invested in a quarterback now.
Yeah.
And they may well give Jalen Milroe every chance over the next couple of years to be the guy. They've got Sam Darnold, who I think is more of a John Schneider pick than a Pete Carroll, Geno Smith pick. So they might be more inclined to be aggressive with their picks this year. So we will see. Anyway, quick couple of super chats. Big Mike says 11-6 for me. Might go 12-5 if we get Hendrickson, but no more than a second. Big thank you to Big Mike. And Carmen says, how much of an impact do you think Robert Saleh will make on the 49ers? I mean, that's definitely a great hire, Robert. You can't deny it. It's a great hire.
It's a great hire.
But I just think I wasn't a big fan of their draft. Like, I understand what they're doing. You know, they're trying to give Robert Saleh all the pieces. They've tried to replace Drake Greenlaw. They're trying to rebuild that defensive line. It all makes sense in the plan. I'm just not sure the players strike any fear for me into the Seahawks, or I'm not particularly worried about anything they've done. Yeah. And you need the pieces. Like, Saleh's a great defensive coordinator.
Yeah.
But you need the pieces. And
he had the pieces when he was in San Francisco, right?
Yeah.
The first time around, he had the pieces. This can be different. So
I mean, yeah, like DeForest Buckner, Arik Armstead, and Nick Bosa.
Yeah.
And then like D Ford was like off the edge as well. And you know, Greenlaw and Warner and Sherman, you know. I'm not being funny, but probably Ken Norton could have coached that team to a good year. Like not to diminish Saleh, but he had all of the horses they needed to win the race.
He did.
Okay, that's as far as I'm going to go. Robbie, really appreciate you doing this. And look, thank you to everybody else, because like the thing is, I said I was going to take a break, and I have written two articles. I've written 2 articles this week and done a stream. So but I just feel like I do like to talk about the NFL. There's been a few things to talk about this week. When there's not much to talk about, Robbie, it's going to be quiet. Like, I'm going to be honest. Like, until we get closer to camp and stuff now.
From here till camp, it's really slow. So
yeah, and I do kind of. I mean, I've tried online to like watch a few Seahawks things and other channels and Seattle sports and stuff like that. I've tried to watch them, and I feel like they're talking about things for the sake of talking about things right now, because there's just nothing to get into. And like, the NFL's kind of gone cold.
Yeah.
So I don't see the point in forcing conversation for the sake of it. So if there's nothing to talk about, we won't do it. If there are things, if the Seahawks do stuff, if there's eventful things to talk about in the NFL, we will either do a stream or do an article. So that's where we're at. Big thank you to everybody who watched this. Really surprised how many people were watching this, given that it was just kind of an impromptu thing. So thank you for that. Thank you for the super chats. Thank you to everybody who continues to read. Thank you to everybody who supports us during the draft coverage as well. Enjoy the spring, heading into the summer, and we will be back very, very soon. It'll fly by, no doubt, till we're back in this talking all the time about the Seahawks have an exciting season. And we know they're going to finish 13-4 now. We've declared that. So there we go.
Let's write it down. It's guaranteed.
Big thank you to everybody. Big thank you to Robbie. Until next time, bye for now.